Growth begins the moment you stop waiting for the right time. Comfort feels safe, but comfort never built a stronger version of anyone. Right now, somewhere inside you, there is a task you have been avoiding, a fear you have been postponing, a version of yourself you already know you could become. Most people wake up hoping life will feel easier today than it did yesterday. But easier is not what builds strength. Difficulty builds strength. Growth is not loud or sudden. It happens quietly, one small decision at a time, every single day. The best part of you is not standing behind you. It is standing in front of you, waiting for you to catch up to it. Today we are going to talk about something simple but powerful, the daily habit of challenging yourself, and exactly how it can reshape your confidence, your discipline, and your entire life. If you're ready to stop settling for comfortable days, then stay with me until the very end. Number 1. Wake up early and set one clear goal. Let me tell you something that changed the entire direction of my life. And it started with something as simple as the time I opened my eyes in the morning. There was a season in my life when I woke up whenever my body felt like waking up. No plan, no purpose, no reason to rush out of bed. And looking back now, I can tell you honestly that those were the years I made the least progress. Because when you wake up without a goal, you are letting the day control you instead of you controlling the day. That is a dangerous place to live in, my friend, and most people live there their entire lives without even realizing it. Waking up early is not about punishing yourself. It is not about proving how tough you are. It is about giving yourself the first advantage of the day before the world starts pulling you in 100 different directions. Think about it this way. The moment you open your eyes, your phone starts buzzing. Your family starts needing things from you. Your job starts demanding your attention. And before you know it, the entire day has been spent reacting to everyone else instead of building your own life. But if you wake up even 1 hour earlier than everyone around you, that 1 hour belongs to nobody but you. That hour is where you set your goal, where you plan your attack on the day, where you decide what kind of person you are going to be for the next 16 hours. Now let us talk about the goal itself. Because waking up early without a clear goal is like starting a car with no destination. You will burn fuel, you will make noise, but you will not arrive anywhere meaningful. I have met so many hardworking people in my life who wake up early, who work long hours, who sweat and struggle every single day, and yet they never seem to move forward. Do you know why? Because they never sat down and decided exactly what they were working toward. They confused motion with progress. They confused being busy with being productive. And those are two completely different things. Setting one clear goal each morning does something powerful to your mind. It gives your brain a target. Human beings are designed to move toward whatever we focus on. If you wake up and your mind is scattered across 10 different worries and 20 different tasks, your energy gets divided into tiny pieces, and tiny pieces of energy cannot build anything strong. But if you wake up and say to yourself, "Today I am going to accomplish this one thing," your entire mind and body start organizing themselves around that single purpose. Your thoughts become sharper, your actions become more direct. Even your emotions start working for you instead of against you, because now you have something meaningful to move toward instead of just surviving another day. Let me give you a picture of two different people. The first person wakes up, checks their phone, scrolls through messages, feels a little bit of stress from what they see, and rolls out of bed feeling behind before the day even begins. The second person wakes up, sits quietly for a few minutes, breathes, and asks a simple question. What is the one thing I need to accomplish today that will move my life forward? That question alone changes the entire emotional tone of the day. The first person starts the day feeling like a victim of circumstances. The second person starts the day feeling like the author of their own story. Same 24 hours, same amount of sleep, completely different results because of one decision made in the first few minutes of the morning. I want you to understand something about human psychology here. Our minds crave direction. When we do not give our minds a clear direction, our minds will create their own direction. And usually that direction is filled with worry, comparison, and distraction. This is why so many people wake up already feeling anxious. Their mind has nothing productive to hold on to, so it grabs onto fear instead. But when you give your mind one clear goal first thing in the morning, you are feeding it something useful to chew on. You are replacing anxiety with purpose. And purpose feels completely different in the body than anxiety does. Purpose gives you energy. Anxiety drains it. Now here is something practical I want you to take with you. The goal you set does not need to be massive. It does not need to be something that changes your entire life in one day. It simply needs to be clear, and it needs to be yours. Maybe your goal for today is to finish one important project. Maybe it is to have one honest conversation you have been avoiding. Maybe it is to improve your health by choosing better food or moving your body for 30 minutes. The size of the goal matters less than the clarity of the goal. A small, clear goal accomplished every single day builds something far greater over time than a big, vague goal that never gets started. I remember learning this lesson the hard way. For years, I told myself I wanted success. I wanted a better life. I wanted to grow. But those words were too vague to act on. Success is not a goal. It is a feeling. A better life is not a goal. It is a wish. The moment I started waking up and writing down one specific action I would take that day, everything shifted. I stopped feeling overwhelmed by the size of my dreams, and I started feeling powerful because of the clarity of my actions. That is the real secret here. Big dreams paralyze us when they stay big and vague. But big dreams, broken into one clear daily goal, become achievable. And achievable goals build confidence. And confidence builds momentum. And momentum is what carries ordinary people to extraordinary places. There is also an emotional reward that comes from this habit that most people never talk about. When you wake up early and set one clear goal, and then you actually accomplish that goal by the end of the day, something happens inside of you. You feel proud. Not loud pride, not the kind you show off to others, but a quiet, steady pride that tells you, I said I would do something and I did it. That feeling builds trust between you and yourself. And let me tell you, trusting yourself is one of the most valuable things a human being can have. Most people do not lack ability, they lack self-trust, because they have broken so many promises to themselves over the years. Waking up early and setting one clear goal, then following through on it, rebuilds that broken trust one morning at a time. So starting tomorrow, before you check anything, before you speak to anyone, before the world gets a chance to hand you its agenda, give yourself the gift of a quiet moment. Wake up a little earlier than you need to. Sit with your thoughts and decide on one clear goal that you are going to chase down before the sun sets again. Do this every single day and watch how differently your life begins to feel. Not because the days get easier, but because you become someone who knows exactly where you are going, one morning at a time. Number 2, do one hard task before checking your phone. I want you to think about the very first thing you do after you open your eyes in the morning. Be honest with yourself right now. For most people, the hand reaches for the phone before the feet even touch the floor. And I want to tell you that single habit is quietly destroying the potential of millions of people every single day. Not because the phone itself is evil, but because of what it does to your mind in the most important minutes you will have all day. Those first minutes after waking up are precious. Your mind is quiet. Your willpower is fresh. Your focus is at its highest point. And most people trade all of that power away for a few scrolls of notifications, messages, and other people's opinions. Let me explain what actually happens inside your brain when you check your phone first thing in the morning. Every notification, every message, every piece of news pulls your attention outward. It puts other people's problems, other people's demands, and other people's opinions at the center of your morning before you have even decided what your own day should look like. You have not even had a chance to think your own thoughts, and already your mind is reacting to someone else's agenda. This is why so many people feel scattered and behind before the day even begins. They gave away their first and freshest energy to things that had nothing to do with their own goals. Now compare that to a person who wakes up and immediately goes toward one hard task. I am not talking about checking email, which feels productive but usually is not. I am talking about the task that actually matters, the task you have been avoiding, the task that requires real thinking, real effort, or real courage. When you do that task first, before anything else has a chance to distract you, you are training your mind to lead instead of follow. You are telling yourself, through action, and not just words, that your goals matter more than everyone else's noise. That is a powerful message to send to your own mind, and it changes how you feel about yourself for the rest of the day. There is a reason why doing the hardest task first works so well, and it comes down to simple human psychology. Your willpower is like a muscle. It is strongest when you first wake up, and it gets weaker as the day goes on, as you make more decisions, face more distractions, and spend more mental energy. If you use that fresh willpower on checking your phone, scrolling through pictures, reading messages that do not require your response yet, you are spending your strongest resource on your weakest priorities. But if you use that same fresh willpower on the task that scares you, the task that challenges you, the task that actually builds your future, you are spending your strongest resource on your highest priority. That is not just a small difference. Over months and years, that difference decides who moves forward in life and who stays stuck. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine two people again. The first person wakes up, checks their phone for 20 minutes, feels a small wave of stress from an email or a message, feels a small wave of comparison from seeing someone else's life on a screen, and only after all of that starts thinking about their own goals. By the time they get to their hard task, their mental energy is already partly used up, and their emotions are already slightly off balance. The second person wakes up and goes straight to the hard task. No distractions, no comparisons, no outside noise. They face the challenge while their mind is clear and their emotions are steady. By the time they finish that hard task, they already feel a sense of accomplishment before the day has even properly started. Which one of these two people do you think builds a stronger life over time? I want to talk about the emotional side of this too, because this is where most people miss the real value. When you complete a hard task early in the day, you carry a feeling of strength with you into everything else you do. It is like you have already won once, so the rest of the day feels lighter. But when you check your phone first and fill your mind with other people's opinions, other people's success, and other people's problems, you often carry a small feeling of pressure or comparison into everything else you do. That feeling builds up quietly, and by the end of the day, many people feel tired not because they worked hard, but because they carried invisible weight from comparing themselves to others before they even started their own work. Here is something else worth thinking about. Hard tasks are usually hard for a reason. They require focus, they require courage, and sometimes they require facing a fear. If you delay that hard task by filling your morning with distractions, your mind has more time to build up excuses. The longer you wait, the bigger that task feels in your mind, even though the task itself has not changed at all. But if you attack it immediately, before your mind has time to talk you out of it, you take away its power over you. This is one of the simplest and most effective ways to defeat procrastination. You do not outthink procrastination. You outact it before it even has a chance to speak. I also want to give you a practical way to think about this. Ask yourself each morning, what is the one task that if I complete it, will make the rest of my day feel lighter and more successful? That is usually the task your mind wants to avoid. That is usually the task connected to your biggest goals. That is usually the task that requires the most courage. And that is exactly the task you should be doing before you allow any outside noise into your mind. This is not about being perfect every single day. It is about building a habit strong enough that even on your low-energy days, you still give your best effort to what matters most before you give any effort to what matters least. There is a quiet kind of confidence that builds in a person who consistently does their hardest task first. It is not loud. It is not something they need to announce to others. It is simply a deep internal knowing that they are someone who takes action instead of someone who reacts to distractions. That feeling changes the way a person walks through the world. It changes the way they speak, the way they make decisions, and the way they handle challenges throughout the rest of the day. And it all starts with one simple choice, made in the first few minutes of the morning, the choice to face something hard before facing anything easy or distracting. So from this point forward, I want you to protect those first moments of your day like they are the most valuable minutes you own, because they truly are. Do not give them away to notifications, messages, or other people's stories. Give them instead to the one task that moves your own life forward. Do the hard thing first. Let your phone wait. Let the noise of the world wait. Your goals deserve your best energy, and your best energy shows up right after you wake, before anything else has the chance to take it from you. Number 3, push past comfort to build daily inner strength. I want you to think about the most comfortable moment of your day. That moment when the couch feels soft, the blanket feels warm, and nothing in the world requires anything from you. That feeling is pleasant, and there is nothing wrong with rest. But I want to tell you something that took me years to fully understand. Comfort, when it becomes a daily habit instead of an occasional reward, slowly drains the strength out of a person without them even noticing it is happening. It happens so quietly that most people do not realize they are getting weaker until life suddenly demands something hard from them, and they discover they no longer have the strength to meet that demand. Inner strength is not something you are simply born with and keep forever without effort. Inner strength is something you build, the same way a person builds physical strength in their body. And just like physical strength requires resistance, inner strength requires resistance too. Every time you choose the harder option instead of the easier one, you are placing a small amount of resistance on your character, and that resistance is exactly what makes you stronger. Every time you choose comfort instead, you are removing that resistance, and without resistance, strength has no reason to grow. This is one of the most misunderstood truths about personal growth. People want to feel strong, but they are unwilling to do the very thing that creates strength in the first place. Let me explain what comfort actually does to the human mind over time. When you consistently choose the easy path, your mind begins to expect ease. It begins to treat any form of difficulty as a threat, rather than as a normal part of life. This is why some people fall apart emotionally over small inconveniences, while other people stay calm and steady, even during real hardship. The difference is not luck. The difference is training. The person who stays calm has trained their mind, again and again, by choosing to face difficulty instead of avoiding it. The person who falls apart has trained their mind, without realizing it, to expect comfort at all times, so when comfort disappears, their entire emotional system feels overwhelmed. I want you to picture 2 different mornings. In the first morning, a person feels tired and decides to skip the walk they promised themselves, skip the reading they planned, and skip the conversation they know they need to have. In the moment, this feels like relief. But that relief is temporary, and underneath it, a quiet voice begins to whisper that they are someone who gives up when things feel hard. That voice grows louder every time comfort wins. In the second morning, a person feels the exact same tiredness, the exact same resistance in their body, but they choose to walk anyway, read anyway, and have the hard conversation anyway. In that moment, a different voice begins to grow. One that says, "I am someone who follows through, even when it is difficult." Over time, that voice becomes the foundation of real confidence, and real confidence is simply the natural result of proof that you can rely on yourself when things get hard. This is where daily challenge becomes so important, because inner strength cannot be built through one dramatic moment alone. It is built through small, repeated choices that most people never see and never celebrate. Nobody applauds you for waking up early when your body wanted more sleep. Nobody applauds you for having a difficult conversation instead of avoiding it. Nobody applauds you for choosing effort over ease in the quiet moments of an ordinary day. But those unseen choices are exactly what shape the character that shows up later, when life presents a challenge big enough for everyone to see. The strength you show in public moments is simply the sum of all the private choices you made when nobody was watching. I also want to speak honestly about fear here, because fear plays a bigger role in comfort seeking than most people admit. Comfort often feels safe because it protects us from failure, embarrassment, or disappointment. If you never push yourself, you never risk falling short. But here is the truth I have learned through watching people over many years. Avoiding difficulty does not protect you from pain. It only delays and often increases it. The person who avoids hard conversations still suffers, just later, and usually with more damage. The person who avoids hard work still faces consequences, just later and usually with fewer options. Pushing past comfort now is not about seeking pain for no reason. It is about choosing a smaller, controlled difficulty today, so you can avoid a much larger, uncontrolled difficulty later. There is also a physical and emotional sensation worth talking about, because pushing past comfort does not feel neutral. It often feels uncomfortable in a very real physical way. Your chest might feel tight before a hard conversation. Your legs might feel heavy before a hard workout. Your mind might feel foggy before starting difficult work. These sensations are not signs that something is wrong. They are simply signs that you are stepping outside of your usual pattern, and your body is reacting to something unfamiliar. The mistake most people make is interpreting this discomfort as a stop sign, when in reality it is closer to a starting line. The discomfort is not there to stop you. It is there because growth always requires your body and mind to stretch beyond what they are used to. I want to give you something practical here as well. You do not need to push past comfort in massive, dramatic ways every single day. Inner strength is built more effectively through small, consistent resistance than through occasional extreme effort. Choose one thing each day that makes you slightly uncomfortable in a productive way. It could be a difficult conversation you have been postponing. It could be a physical challenge your body has been avoiding. It could be admitting a mistake instead of hiding it. It could be starting a task you have been putting off simply because it feels overwhelming. The size of the challenge matters far less than the consistency of choosing it. Small daily resistance, repeated over time, builds a kind of strength that sudden bursts of effort never can. I have watched people transform simply by changing their relationship with discomfort. They stop seeing it as something to avoid and start seeing it as something to walk toward on purpose. And something interesting happens when this shift occurs. Life does not actually become harder for these people. It becomes more manageable because they have built the internal strength required to handle what life naturally brings. The person who has been pushing past comfort daily is far better prepared for unexpected hardship than the person who has spent their days avoiding anything difficult. Life does not ask permission before sending challenges, and the only real preparation is the strength you have already built through your own daily choices. So starting today, look for the moment in your day when comfort is calling you toward the easier option. That moment will show up, often quietly, sometimes multiple times throughout your day. And in that moment, choose the harder path on purpose, not because it feels good in the instant, but because of who it makes you become over time. Each time you push past comfort, you are not just completing a task, you are building a version of yourself capable of handling far more than you currently believe you can handle. Number 4. Track small wins to fuel tomorrow's bigger effort. Let me ask you a simple question. Can you tell me, without stopping to think too hard, what you actually accomplished yesterday? Most people cannot answer that question clearly. They know they were busy. They know they were tired by the end of the day. But when you ask them to name their actual wins, the specific things they achieved, they go quiet. And that silence tells you something important. If you cannot see your own progress, your mind starts to believe that no progress is being made at all, even when it actually is. This is one of the biggest hidden reasons people lose motivation over time. It is not that they are failing, it is that they are not tracking their winning. The human mind is built in a very particular way when it comes to motivation. We are not motivated by vague ideas of eventual success far off in the future. We are motivated by evidence, real, visible evidence that our efforts are actually producing something. When that evidence is missing, even real progress can feel invisible, and invisible progress does very little to keep a person moving forward. This is exactly why tracking small wins matters so much. It is not about writing things down just to feel organized. It is about giving your mind the proof it needs to keep believing that your effort is worth continuing. Let me explain what happens inside a person who never tracks their wins. They wake up, they work hard, they push through challenges, and at the end of the day, all of that effort simply disappears into the blur of daily life. Tomorrow arrives, and it feels like starting completely from zero again, because there is no clear reminder of what was already built the day before. This creates a strange kind of exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion from working too hard, but emotional exhaustion from feeling like nothing is accumulating. And when a person feels like nothing is accumulating, giving up starts to feel reasonable, even if their actual results have been steadily improving all along. Now compare that to a person who takes a few minutes each day to track their wins, no matter how small those wins might seem. This person finishes their day and writes down, "I finished the report I was avoiding. I had the honest conversation I was afraid to have. I said no to something that was not serving my goals. I completed my workout even though I did not feel like it." On paper, these might look like small, unimportant details. But inside the mind of that person, something powerful is happening. Each small win becomes proof, and proof builds belief. And belief is the fuel that carries a person into tomorrow with more energy than they had today. I want to talk about why small wins matter more than people realize, especially in comparison to big wins. Big wins are rare. They do not happen every day. And if you wait for a big win to feel proud of yourself, you will spend most of your life feeling unaccomplished, even while you are actually growing. Small wins, on the other hand, happen constantly if you are paying attention to them. And when you string enough small wins together, day after day, they eventually build into something much bigger than any single big win could ever create on its own. This is one of the quiet secrets behind consistent, long-term success. It is rarely built from one dramatic moment. It is built from hundreds of small moments that most people never bothered to notice or record. There is also a psychological reward system inside the human brain that responds directly to this kind of tracking. When you acknowledge a win, even a small one, your brain releases a sense of satisfaction that makes you want to repeat the behavior that created it. This is not something you need to force. It happens naturally once you start paying attention. The simple act of recognizing your own effort creates a feedback loop, where today's small win encourages tomorrow's continued effort, which creates another small win, which then encourages the next day, and so on. Without tracking, this loop breaks, because there is nothing clear connecting yesterday's effort to today's motivation. I also want to speak about the emotional protection that tracking small wins provides during difficult periods. Life is not always kind, and there will be days when things do not go the way you hoped. Days when you feel discouraged. Days when doubt creeps in and tells you that nothing you are doing matters. On those days, having a record of your small wins becomes something you can return to, something real and undeniable that reminds you of your own capability. It becomes evidence against the doubt trying to convince you to quit. Doubt speaks in vague, emotional language, telling you that you are not making progress, that nothing is working. But your tracked wins speak in specific, factual language, showing you exactly what you have already overcome and exactly what you are already capable of doing again. Let me give you something practical here, because this is not meant to be an abstract idea. It is meant to be something you actually use. At the end of each day, take a few quiet minutes and write down 3 small wins from that day, no matter how simple they seem. It does not need to be complicated. It does not need to sound impressive. It simply needs to be true. This small habit, done consistently, becomes one of the most powerful tools for maintaining long-term motivation, because it shifts your attention away from what you did not accomplish and toward what you actually did accomplish. Most people spend their evenings mentally listing their failures and shortcomings. Very few spend their evenings mentally listing their wins. And this imbalance is exactly why so many hardworking people still struggle with self-doubt, despite real progress happening in their lives. I want you to also understand the connection between today's tracked wins and tomorrow's bigger effort, because this is where the real value shows up over time. When you go to bed having clearly acknowledged what you accomplished, you wake up carrying a different energy than someone who goes to bed feeling like nothing was achieved. That energy shows up in how quickly you get started the next morning, how much resistance you feel towards starting hard tasks, and how much confidence you bring into new challenges. Tracking small wins does not just record the past. It directly shapes the emotional starting point of your future effort. This is why some people seem to build unstoppable momentum over time, while others seem to restart from zero every single day, even though both groups may be working equally hard. So starting tonight, Before you close your eyes, take a moment to look back honestly at your day and find the wins hidden inside it, even the small ones that feel too ordinary to mention. Write them down if you can. Speak them out loud if that feels more natural to you. Either way, give yourself credit for the effort you actually put in today, because that credit becomes the fuel that carries you into tomorrow with more strength, more belief, and more willingness to push a little harder than you did today. Number 5, learn one new skill every single passing day. I want to ask you something that might feel uncomfortable at first. When was the last time you truly learned something new? Something that stretched your mind and made you think in a way you had never thought before? For many people, the honest answer goes back further than they would like to admit. Somewhere along the way, between finishing school and settling into daily routines, learning quietly stopped. Not because people became less capable, but because they stopped making learning a priority. And I want to tell you plainly, that single shift, the moment a person stops learning, is often the exact moment their growth begins to slow down without them even realizing it. Learning is not something that belongs only to classrooms or to the early years of life. Learning is a daily discipline, the same way exercise is a daily discipline for the body. If you stop exercising, your body slowly loses strength, even if you do not notice it happening right away. If you stop learning, your mind slowly loses sharpness, flexibility, and confidence, even if you do not notice that happening right away either. The danger with both of these is that the decline is gradual, quiet, and easy to ignore, until one day you realize you feel stuck, outdated, or less capable than you used to be, without understanding exactly why. Let me explain why learning something new every single day matters so much, beyond just gaining information. When you learn something new, you are not simply collecting facts. You are training your brain to remain flexible, to remain open, and to remain willing to be a beginner again. This willingness to be a beginner is one of the most underrated qualities a person can have. Most people, as they grow older, become afraid of not knowing something. They avoid situations where they might look inexperienced or unsure. But this avoidance slowly shrinks their world, because growth always requires stepping into unfamiliar territory, and unfamiliar territory always begins with not knowing. I want you to think about how a young mind learns compared to an older mind that has stopped practicing the habit of learning. A young mind is curious by nature. It asks questions constantly, makes mistakes without shame, and absorbs new information with excitement rather than fear. Somewhere along the way, many adults lose this quality, not because they became less intelligent, but because they became more afraid of failure and judgment. Learning something new every day is one of the most effective ways to rebuild that lost curiosity. It reminds your mind what it feels like to try something without already being good at it. And that feeling, uncomfortable as it may be, is exactly what keeps a person mentally young and adaptable throughout their entire life. There is also a direct connection between daily learning and personal confidence that most people overlook. Confidence does not come from already knowing everything. Real, lasting confidence comes from trusting your own ability to learn whatever you do not yet know. Think about that difference for a moment. A person who believes they must already know something in order to feel confident will always feel anxious when facing something unfamiliar. But a person who trusts their own ability to learn will walk into unfamiliar situations with a completely different energy, because they know that even if they do not have the answer right now, they have the ability to find it. Daily learning builds this second kind of confidence, the kind that does not depend on already having all the answers. Now let me talk about why learning one new thing daily fits so naturally into the idea of challenging yourself every single day. A daily challenge does not always need to be physical or emotional. Sometimes the most powerful daily challenge is mental. Choosing to learn something new forces your brain out of its comfortable, familiar patterns. It requires focus, patience, and a willingness to feel slightly unsure of yourself, even if only for a few minutes. This mental discomfort is not something to avoid. It is something to welcome, because it is a clear sign that your mind is growing, rather than simply repeating the same familiar loops it has run for years. I also want to point out something important about the size of what you learn each day, because many people assume they need to learn something big or impressive in order for it to count. That is simply not true. And honestly, that belief stops far too many people before they even begin. Learning one small fact, one new word, one small skill, or one new way of solving a familiar problem still counts as real learning. The size of the lesson matters far less than the consistency of the habit. A person who learns one small thing every day for an entire year ends up knowing far more than a person who occasionally tries to learn something big, but gives up after a few attempts because it felt overwhelming. Let me give you a clear picture of how this compounds over time, because this is where the real power of daily learning becomes obvious. If you learn one new thing today, it may not seem like much. But if you do that again tomorrow, and again the day after, and continue this pattern for months and years, you are no longer talking about a small habit. You are talking about a person who has quietly built an enormous amount of knowledge, skill, and mental flexibility, simply through consistent, small daily effort. Most people underestimate what daily learning can produce over time, because they are only looking at a single day instead of looking at the pattern repeated across months and years. I want to address something honestly here as well, because daily learning is not always comfortable, and it should not always feel easy. There will be days when the thing you are trying to learn feels frustrating, confusing, or slower than you would like. This is completely normal, and it does not mean you are failing. It simply means you are in the middle of the learning process, the part that happens before things start to feel natural. Too many people quit exactly at this frustrating stage, mistaking normal difficulty for personal failure. But if you can push through that uncomfortable middle stage, even in small daily doses, you build not only knowledge, but also patience. And patience is one of the most valuable skills a person can develop in any area of life. There is also something deeply satisfying about ending your day knowing you learned something you did not know when you woke up. It gives a quiet sense of forward motion, a feeling that even if the day was difficult or ordinary in other ways, your mind still grew a little bit. This feeling matters more than people realize, because it protects against the sense of stagnation that so many people quietly struggle with. Life can start to feel repetitive when every day looks the same, and nothing new is being added to your understanding of the world. Daily learning breaks that repetition, even in small ways, and reminds you that growth is always available, no matter your age, your background, or your current situation. So I want to encourage you, starting today, to choose one small thing you do not yet understand and commit to learning it before your day ends. It does not need to be complicated. It does not need to be impressive to anyone else. It simply needs to be new to you. Do this again tomorrow, and again the day after that. And allow this simple daily habit to slowly reshape not just what you know, but who you become as a person willing to keep growing for the rest of your life. Number 6, face your biggest fear before the sun sets. I want you to think of something specific right now. Not fear in general, but one exact fear that has been sitting quietly inside you. The one you already know I am talking about the moment you hear these words. Maybe it is a conversation you have been avoiding for months. Maybe it is a decision you keep postponing because the outcome feels uncertain. Maybe it is a simple action that should not feel difficult at all, yet somehow you find a reason to delay it every single day. That fear has a name inside your mind, even if you have never said it out loud. And I want to tell you clearly, that fear will not disappear on its own by waiting. It only grows stronger the longer it is left unchallenged. Fear behaves in a very particular way inside the human mind, and understanding this behavior is important. Fear feeds on avoidance. Every single time you avoid the thing you are afraid of, you are not making that fear smaller, you are actually making it larger. Your mind interprets avoidance as confirmation that the fear was justified. If you avoid a hard conversation, your mind quietly concludes that the conversation must truly be dangerous. Otherwise, why would you keep avoiding it? If you avoid trying something new because you are afraid of failing, your mind concludes that failure must truly be something worth fearing. Otherwise, why would you keep running from it? This is how ordinary fears slowly grow into paralyzing ones. Not because the situation itself became more dangerous, but because avoidance kept confirming the danger inside your own mind. Now let us talk about what happens when a person does the opposite, when they choose to face their fear directly instead of avoiding it. The moment you take action towards something you are afraid of, even if your hands are shaking and your heart is racing, you send a completely different message to your mind. You are telling your mind, "This fear does not control me. I am capable of moving forward, even while feeling afraid." This message is powerful, because courage was never about the absence of fear. Courage is action taken while fear is still present. Anyone who tells you that brave people simply do not feel fear is misunderstanding what courage actually is. Every person who has ever done something meaningful in their life felt fear before doing it. The difference between them and someone who stays stuck is simply that they moved forward anyway. I want to explain why facing your biggest fear before the sun sets matters so much, rather than simply facing it eventually. There is a specific danger in allowing fear to sit inside you for an entire day, or several days, or weeks. The longer fear is allowed to remain unaddressed, the more space it takes up inside your mind. It starts as a small, specific worry, but the longer it sits there untouched, it slowly expands and begins to color everything else you do. You may find yourself distracted during unrelated tasks, irritable with people who have nothing to do with the actual fear, or exhausted from carrying something that has not even happened yet. This is one of the most exhausting parts of unaddressed fear. It does not stay contained to one area of your life. It leaks into everything, quietly draining your energy, even when you are focused on something completely different. Let me describe what it physically and emotionally feels like to carry an unfaced fear throughout an entire day, because this is something almost everyone has experienced. There is a tightness that sits in the chest or stomach, a low-level tension that does not fully go away, no matter what else you are doing. Even small, pleasant moments during the day feel slightly dimmed, because part of your mind is still aware of the thing you are avoiding. This is the hidden cost of postponing fear. People often think they are protecting themselves by avoiding the difficult thing until later, but in reality, they are simply choosing to feel that tension for a longer period of time instead of a shorter one. Facing the fear quickly, even if uncomfortable in the moment, actually shortens the total amount of suffering compared to allowing it to linger. I also want to talk about what happens on the other side of facing a fear, because this part is often forgotten in conversations about courage. Once you actually face the thing you were afraid of, regardless of the outcome, something shifts inside you almost immediately. Even if the conversation did not go perfectly, even if the attempt did not succeed exactly as planned, there is an undeniable sense of relief that comes simply from no longer carrying the weight of avoidance. This relief is real, and it is available to you the very moment you choose action over avoidance. Many people spend so much energy imagining how terrible facing their fear will feel. Yet almost universally, the actual experience of facing it feels lighter than the experience of continuing to avoid it. There is a psychological pattern worth understanding here as well. Human beings tend to imagine the worst possible outcome when they think about a feared situation. And this imagined outcome is almost always worse than what actually happens in reality. Your mind, when left alone with fear, tends to exaggerate danger, embarrassment, or failure far beyond what is realistic. This is not a personal weakness. It is simply how the human mind protects itself, by preparing for the worst-case scenario. But this protective instinct becomes a problem when it stops you from taking any action at all. The only way to correct this exaggerated fear is through direct experience. You cannot think your way out of an exaggerated fear. You can only act your way out of it, by facing the actual situation and discovering that it was rarely as unbearable as your mind had predicted. I want to give you something practical here as well. Choosing to face your biggest fear before the sun sets does not mean you need to solve every fear in your life within a single day. It means choosing one specific fear, the one weighing most heavily on you right now, and taking direct action toward it before today ends. This could mean sending the message you have been avoiding. This could mean asking the question you have been afraid to ask. This could mean starting the task you have been putting off, simply because the outcome felt uncertain. The specific fear will look different for every person, but the principle remains the same. Do not let the sun set on a fear you have the power to face today. There is also a compounding effect that happens when this becomes a daily practice rather than a rare event. Each time you face a fear before the day ends, you build evidence that fear is something you can move through rather than something that controls you. This evidence accumulates over time, and eventually, facing fear becomes less about forcing yourself through gritted teeth and more about simply trusting the pattern you have already proven to yourself again and again. This is how people slowly transform from someone who avoids difficulty into someone who moves toward it with steady confidence, not because they stopped feeling fear, but because they stopped allowing fear to make their decisions for them. So before this day ends, I want you to identify the one fear that has been sitting quietly inside you, the one you already knew the moment you started listening to this. Do not wait for tomorrow to feel more ready, because tomorrow will bring its own fears. And if today's fear remains unaddressed, it will simply carry forward and add itself to whatever comes next. Take action today, while the sun is still up, and prove to yourself once again that you are someone capable of moving forward, even when your hands are shaking and your heart is racing the entire way through. Number 7, replace easy excuses with one bold daily action. I want you to listen closely to the words you use with yourself when you decide not to do something important. I did not have time today. I will start next week when things settle down. I am too tired right now. I will do it tomorrow with more energy. These sentences sound reasonable in the moment. They sound almost responsible, almost logical. But I want to tell you something honestly. These sentences are excuses wearing the costume of good reasons. And the human mind is remarkably skilled at making excuses sound intelligent enough that we rarely question them. The danger of an excuse is not that it is obviously false. The danger is that it is just believable enough to keep you comfortable while your life quietly stays exactly the same. Let me explain how excuses actually work inside the mind, because understanding this changes how you respond to them. An excuse is not simply laziness, and treating it that way misses the real problem. An excuse is usually your mind's way of protecting you from discomfort, risk, or the possibility of failure. When you tell yourself you will start tomorrow, some part of you genuinely believes this is protecting you from doing something difficult today. The problem is that tomorrow arrives carrying its own excuses, freshly created and just as convincing as yesterday's. This is why so many people spend years circling the same goals without ever truly moving toward them. It is not because they lack ability. It is because they keep trading bold action for comfortable excuses, one day at a time, without ever noticing the pattern forming. I want you to picture how this pattern builds over time, because a single excuse rarely feels significant on its own. Skipping one workout does not ruin your health. Delaying one difficult conversation does not destroy a relationship. Postponing one important task does not collapse an entire goal. This is exactly why excuses are so dangerous. Each individual excuse feels small and forgivable, so your mind never raises an alarm. But excuses are rarely isolated events. They form patterns, and patterns shape identity. A person who repeatedly chooses the easy excuse over the bold action slowly begins to see themselves as someone who does not follow through, and once that identity forms, it becomes the lens through which every future decision gets filtered. Now let us talk about what a bold daily action actually does differently, because this is where real change begins. A bold action does not need to be dramatic or impressive to others. It simply needs to be honest, meaning it directly confronts the exact thing your excuse was trying to avoid. If your excuse says you do not have time, the bold action is making time, even if only for 10 focused minutes. If your excuse says you are too nervous to speak up, the bold action is speaking up anyway, even with a shaking voice. The boldness is not measured by how big the action looks from the outside. It is measured by how directly it challenges the specific excuse that was trying to stop you. I want to speak honestly about why bold action feels harder in the moment than making an excuse, because pretending it feels easy would not be truthful. Bold action often comes with a physical sensation of resistance, a tightness in the body, a hesitation in the mind, a voice inside asking whether this is really necessary today. This resistance is normal and does not mean something is wrong. It simply means you are choosing to move against a pattern your mind has grown used to. The excuse, by comparison, feels smooth and immediate, like slipping into something familiar and worn. This is exactly why excuses win so often. They require no resistance at all, but comfort without resistance rarely builds anything meaningful, and this is a truth many people avoid facing until much later in life. Let me give you a clear comparison between two people living very similar lives, because the difference between them is smaller than most people assume. Both people wake up with the same goals and the same responsibilities. Both people feel tired some mornings and unmotivated on certain days. The difference is not in how they feel, because both of them feel resistance regularly. The difference is in what they choose to do with that resistance. One person listens to the resistance and creates a reasonable-sounding excuse to avoid the action. The other person acknowledges the resistance honestly, then chooses one bold action anyway, despite the discomfort. Over a single day, the difference between these two people looks small. Over a year, the difference becomes enormous, because one person has built hundreds of small proofs of follow-through, while the other has built hundreds of small proofs of avoidance. I also want to address something that many people misunderstand about bold action. Boldness does not mean the absence of fear or doubt. In fact, most bold actions are taken while fear and doubt are still fully present. The mistake many people make is waiting to feel confident before taking action, believing that confidence must come first. But confidence is usually built after action, not before it. If you wait until the excuse disappears and the fear fades completely before acting, you may wait indefinitely, because excuses and fear often do not disappear on their own. They fade only after you have proven to yourself, through direct action, that they were exaggerating the actual danger. There is something important to understand about replacing an excuse rather than simply fighting against it. Trying to eliminate excuses through willpower alone is exhausting and rarely sustainable, because the mind will always find new excuses to replace the ones you defeated. A more effective approach is choosing one specific bold action each day that directly answers whatever excuse tends to show up most often for you. If your most common excuse involves time, your bold action becomes protecting a specific block of time no matter what. If your most common excuse involves fear of judgment, your bold action becomes doing the thing anyway, while judgment is still a possibility. This targeted approach works better than vague motivation, because it directly confronts the specific pattern holding you back, rather than trying to fight against an abstract idea of laziness. I want to also mention the emotional aftermath of choosing bold action over easy excuses, because this part deserves attention. After taking bold action, even a small one, there is often a distinct feeling of lightness, almost like something heavy has been set down. This feeling exists because carrying an unaddressed excuse quietly weighs on a person throughout the day, even if they are not consciously aware of it. Choosing bold action removes that weight immediately, replacing it with a quiet sense of integrity, the feeling of knowing your actions actually matched your intentions today. This feeling cannot be manufactured through excuses, no matter how comfortable those excuses may feel in the moment. So today, I want you to notice the exact moment an excuse tries to enter your mind. Notice how reasonable it sounds, how quietly it slips in, disguised as logic or self-care. And in that exact moment, choose one bold action instead, something small enough to actually complete, but direct enough to answer the excuse honestly. Do this again tomorrow, and again the day after, and allow this daily choice to slowly rebuild your relationship with yourself. One bold action replacing one easy excuse, until bold action simply becomes who you are. Number 8. Stretch your limits further than you did yesterday. I want you to think honestly about where your limits actually sit right now, because most people believe their limits are fixed points, solid walls that mark the exact edge of what they are capable of. But I want to tell you something that took me a long time to fully accept. Your limits are not walls at all. They are more like lines drawn in soft ground, lines that move every single time you press against them. The problem is that most people never press against them at all. They see the line, assume it is permanent, and quietly build their entire life inside that boundary, without ever testing whether it was real to begin with. Let me explain how limits actually form inside a person, because this understanding changes everything about how you approach growth. Your current limits are not a measurement of your true potential. They are simply a record of what you have attempted so far. If you have never carried something heavy, your body assumes lifting anything beyond a certain weight is impossible. If you have never spoken in front of a group, your mind assumes public speaking is something reserved for other kinds of people. These assumed limits feel completely real and solid, yet they are almost always smaller than what a person is actually capable of, simply because they were formed through lack of attempt rather than through actual testing. Now I want you to picture what happens the very first time someone pushes slightly beyond a limit they believed was fixed. Maybe they run one block further than they thought their body could handle. Maybe they stay in a difficult conversation 2 minutes longer than they normally would before giving up. Maybe they stay in a difficult conversation 2 minutes longer than they normally would before giving up. In that single moment of pushing slightly further, something important happens. The old limit is proven false, not destroyed completely, not replaced with an entirely new identity, but proven false in that one specific instance. And once a limit has been proven false even once, it becomes much harder for the mind to fully believe in it again. This is exactly why stretching your limits daily matters so much more than attempting one dramatic breakthrough occasionally. A single large effort, done once, can be inspiring, but it rarely changes your baseline understanding of what you are capable of. Daily stretching, even in small amounts, slowly and consistently rewrites that baseline. Each day you push slightly further than the day before. You are not just accomplishing a slightly harder task. You are teaching your mind and body a new lesson about where the real edge actually sits. Over time, this repeated lesson becomes deeply embedded, until pushing further starts to feel less like fighting against a wall, and more like simply continuing forward along a path that keeps opening in front of you. I want to talk honestly about the discomfort involved in this process, because stretching a limit is rarely a pleasant sensation in the moment it happens. There is a reason your body and mind created that limit in the first place, usually as a form of protection, a way of conserving energy or avoiding risk. When you push against it, you will likely feel resistance, maybe even a kind of internal alarm, telling you that you have reached your maximum and should stop. This sensation is uncomfortable, but it is important to understand that this alarm is often set too early, calibrated more toward safety and comfort than toward your actual maximum capability. Learning to recognize the difference between genuine danger and simple discomfort is one of the most valuable skills you can develop, because it allows you to keep moving forward through the second kind while still respecting the first. Let me give you a comparison that makes this idea easier to understand. Think of two people who both attempt the exact same challenging task on the exact same day. The first person reaches the point of discomfort, feels the resistance rising, and immediately stops, believing they have reached their true limit. The second person reaches that same point of discomfort, acknowledges it honestly, but chooses to continue for just a little longer, not recklessly, but deliberately. At the end of the task, both people may look similarly tired on the outside, but internally, something very different has happened. The first person leaves with their old limit fully intact, unchanged and unchallenged. The second person leaves having proven, through direct experience, that their actual capacity extends further than they previously believed. Repeat this pattern daily, and the difference between these two people becomes enormous over time. I also want to address something important about comparison here, because stretching your limits should never be about comparing yourself to other people. Someone else's limit means very little to your own growth, because their starting point, their body, their circumstances, and their history are completely different from yours. The only meaningful comparison is between who you were yesterday and who you are today. This shift in comparison removes a huge amount of unnecessary pressure and discouragement. You are not competing against someone who has been training for years while you are just beginning. You are simply competing against your own previous edge, and that edge is something you have full control over, one small stretch at a time. There is also a mental component to this that deserves real attention, because stretching physical or practical limits is only part of the picture. Mental limits work the exact same way as physical ones. If you have never allowed yourself to sit with an uncomfortable emotion without immediately distracting yourself, your mind assumes that discomfort is unbearable. If you have never pushed through boredom to finish something difficult, your mind assumes that boredom must be escaped immediately. Stretching these mental limits daily, even by small amounts, such as sitting with discomfort a little longer, or staying focused a little past the point where distraction usually wins, builds a form of internal strength that eventually applies to every area of your life, not just the specific task you were practicing on. I want to give you something practical to carry forward from this. Each day, look at whatever challenge you are facing, whether physical, mental, or emotional, and ask yourself honestly where your usual stopping point tends to be. Then commit to pushing just slightly past that point, not recklessly, not to the point of real harm, but enough to send a clear message to your mind that the old limit was not the true limit at all. This does not require dramatic effort. It requires consistent, deliberate effort, applied daily, in whatever form challenges you that particular day. So starting today, stop treating your current limits as permanent facts about who you are. Start treating them as temporary lines that exist simply because you have not tested them yet. Push slightly further than you did yesterday, in whatever form that challenge takes, and trust that this small, repeated act of stretching is quietly building a version of you capable of far more than the version who woke up this morning still believing in yesterday's limits.